Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge, and welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. I'm in the sanctuary today broadcasting. Want to give a shout out to Black Lives Matter, Angela Austin, and Michael Lynn, and everyone involved in the group, or in the organization, I should say. You're doing a great job, and we are behind you. We are allies, and we are accomplices. Let's get to the guest because he is in the middle of something. What's happening, Chris? How you doing?
I'm well, Jerry. Thanks for having me.
So I understand you're in Vegas right now. So who you want to give some shout outs to Vegas, and we'll talk about why you're in Vegas in a second.
Oh, yeah. I'm in Vegas. One of my favorite places to visit, actually. I enjoy, not for the reasons you might think, though. I enjoy the business of Vegas, man. And so here during Summer League in Vegas for the NBA.
I used to work for Clark County. I was setting up the environmental health system out there, and I used to come out there, and I loved the hustle. It wasn't the gambling, it wasn't the shows, it wasn't all that stuff, because that stuff gets old like in 5 minutes to me because it's difficult. But the hustle that's out there, I love it.
I agree.
So did you have some shout outs, though, you were going to give?
Just generally speaking?
Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, shout out A to the Lansing community, man. I won't get too much into it right now. I guess I'll do those shout outs a little later, but shout out to the TBL. Basically all of the shouts out that I'm about to do has something to do with what we're talking about. So I'll wait about that.
Oh, okay. No worries. I don't mind. So let's get into you a little bit. So your team's playing right now. I want to mention that. Or they're coming up in like 10 or 15 minutes. So we're going to cruise through the show because I don't want you to miss as much of the game as possible.
Oh, good.
So let's talk about you a little bit. Where were you born and raised? Where'd you go to school? What brought you to being the owner of the Lansing Pharaohs?
Yeah, I appreciate your time, first and foremost. So the Lansing Pharaohs, just so that everyone knows, is a professional basketball team that's getting ready to come to Lansing, Michigan. Actually, we're there. But our season won't start until March of 2022. So we're doing everything that we got to do to get ready for it. But very competitive basketball, part of the TBL, which is the basketball league. And if you want to put it in perspective, it's probably a tier in terms of competition underneath the G League, which is the feeder league into the NBA, right? So AA ball versus AAA or majors is probably the best way to put it. But super excited to be coming to the Lansing community. With that, though, I will say, here's shout outs, right? So with that, I will say shout out to really the Lansing community, but specifically there were some people who, as we were thinking about coming into the Lansing market, really supported those efforts. Folks like Representative Sarah Anthony was certainly one of them. No, she's
my
awesome.
Favorite. I love
her. Mayor Andy Shore and his administration was certainly supportive. The others were Dez Ferguson. Can't forget about Dez and Moneyball. So they're going to be our merchandiser. So shout out to Dez for sure.
I love Dez too.
Yeah, he's good people. And then Tony Willis from Leap as well. Tony Willis from Leap, super solid guy. Has been supported from the very beginning. And the last guy I'd say is Mike Price from the Lansing Sports Authority. So, that was kind of a nucleus of people that really supported as we were getting started. So I certainly want to say shout out to them. But about me, I am from Pontiac, Michigan, Yaktown, born and raised. So from Pontiac, Michigan, went to Pontiac Northern, but then actually went to Cranbrook on a scholarship. They say it was academic, but I was pretty good at athletics as well. So I played 3 sports in high school: basketball, football, and track. Basketball has always been my favorite sport. I was just always best at football. And so after I graduated from high school, I ended up going over to Hope College in Michigan, in Holland, Michigan, over near Grand Rapids. Played football there. Was a really interesting experience. I found out when we got there that they call Hope College kind of the Ivy League school of the Midwest, particularly of Michigan. Because there are a lot of influential people that send their kids there and no one would ever even know about it. So went to Hope College, majored in accounting and business management, minored in philosophy. Worked in corporate America shortly after that in the Grand Rapids area, but always been an entrepreneur at heart. And so then I moved back home to Pontiac shortly after that. And I actually ran for city council and state representative in my hometown. So came within 40 votes of winning that city council seat against an incumbent president. So that was a heartbreaker. But in the process of running for state representative, there was a friend of mine who actually, sorry if I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Not at all.
There was a friend of mine who supported my campaign named Jake, who at the time is and was the owner of Sticky Cannabis Operations. We had one store in Ypsilanti at the time, and it was a medical store. Fast forward though, now I'm a partner in Sticky Cannabis Operations. And so we have 2 operating stores, one in Battle Creek, one in Ypsilanti. And then both of those are adult use markets. And then we have 2 or 3 more coming by Q3. So Muskegon is on the way. River Rouge is on the way. So we moved from our Detroit store to River Rouge because Detroit's having a hard time figuring it out right now. And then we also, I love Detroit, by the way, just they're having a hard time. And then our other one is Southfield, which would be one of 3. So we're growing. My job is generally project expansion, mixed with a little government affairs, mixed with PR-oriented things. So the way that the team came about.
Yeah. You keep going, man. I don't need to say a thing. You're doing it.
I'm sorry. This is your show. Just tell me when to shut up.
No, this is your show, actually.
Okay,
so I'm just here to keep it moving.
No doubt. No doubt. The way that the team came about is I actually reached out to the TBL to ask them if we could be sponsors for the entire league. I'm talking about the Sticky Cannabis operation. And because one of my goals is to help educate people. Right. I think there's this misnomer that was certainly propaganda over the course of the last 50 or 60 years, probably even more, related to quote unquote drugs, but particularly cannabis. And, a lot of people call it marijuana, which is a problem unto itself. Right. And so anyway, long story short, I wanted to help culturally push the narrative forward. And what better way to do that than the professional league, right? The league is super progressive, but not quite that progressive yet. But what ended up happening was they ended up offering me an opportunity to open up a team in the Michigan market, with my company being the main sponsor of that team. And of course, I'm from Metro Detroit, so the thought crossed my mind. But then I thought to myself, it's a super saturated market in the Metro Detroit area. Of course, Lansing has Michigan State, but there isn't a professional basketball team necessarily, for people from the region to have an opportunity to play for a team locally. But Lansing is super rich in basketball tradition.
Of course we are.
Of course you are. So for us, it was almost a no-brainer because there isn't a team there. There's an opportunity. Kids don't know any different between a Detroit Pistons player or another professional basketball player, especially if they're local, especially if they're in their school systems, especially if they're engaging with the community. And so in my mind, I said, we can have a really successful product here that impacts the community positively, of course, but provides another source of entertainment for a city that's known for basketball, that doesn't necessarily have easy access to basketball without having to travel 2.5 hours, right? Or pay $250 for a ticket. To pay $50 for parking. And we're really just trying to provide that opportunity. Okay, I'll let you ask the question. Go ahead.
Well, I want to go back to the beginning, but I ain't gonna. Just in the market there, I mean, everybody will probably automatically think of Magic Johnson. Maybe they'll think about Jay and Sam real quick, from both Everett and Eastern players, and then jump up to Valentine and even Valentine's dad, coming out of Sexton. I probably skipped a bunch of super important people, but I lived in Grand Rapids for a little while, Ann Arbor for a while. So I missed some of the high school kids that were around here in that time. But do you think you'll get, there's Michigan State basketball fans are what do I want to say? Enthusiastic. I'll use that word. You think you'll get that same vibe here? Because I kind of feel like you're gonna.
Listen, I hope so.
Uh-huh.
I think what we're doing right now is we're laying the groundwork, right, for what will be our future in Lansing. And so I think so long as we are doing some of the things that we've been doing, partnering with the school district, being out in front of as many things as possible, being involved with as many, even before we get a team, right?
Yeah.
Or the actual players. Just doing as much as we can in the Lansing community, I think we'll be okay. And I think we're doing okay right now. Because I'm on your show, so that means we're doing something right.
Hey, I forgot. I got a shout out to Carol and Charles Thomas. I'm starting to remember all my friends and thinking, oh shit, I better name.
No worries, no worries. So yeah, I think this could really become a staple of the community. I think year one is going to be super important, but I think we're willing to put in the work to be a part, even with our cannabis companies. I'm not interested in just existing in a location, right? Our goal is to be of the community that we exist in, which I believe all small businesses and major corporations should be. And it's no different for us. It's no different for the Lansing business.
Yeah. When you came here and met with me and gave me kind of an overview of what you were doing, I was super excited about that. Now, I hope we have a follow-up meeting because I've been thinking about it and I want to change some of my answers maybe.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I don't know if this is still the same, but do you mind saying where you're going to be playing?
Yeah, no, I don't mind. And actually, you'll get an exclusive. So we'll be playing at the Don Johnson Fieldhouse.
Man, Don Johnson.
At the Don Johnson Fieldhouse. Super excited. We have a really good relationship with the school district. We're actually going to be doing quite a bit with the school district. We're committing 50 to 100 tickets every game for the school district to I guess, disperse however they see fit, in partnership with players coming to pep rallies, in partnership with players going to classes. Hopefully they use them to incentivize grades and attendance and things like that. But you can anticipate that the school district will be responsible for 50 to 100, whether it's kids or partners or teachers, at every game. And so super excited. And I'll throw out there that we have a ribbon cutting ceremony that you're certainly invited to, Gary, on August 18th, Wednesday, at 12 o'clock at the Don Johnson Fieldhouse, just to say, hey, we're here. And hopefully, we're welcomed by the Lansing community in partnership with the Lansing Regional Chamber.
Nice. I will definitely be there. It's only a block and a half away from where I'm sitting right now. Go for a walk. I'll show you all the plaques and trophies I'm on, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
So, man, can we talk about cannabis for a little bit and then come back to basketball for a second?
Well, and I will say this too, right quick. You did mention going back to the beginning. Also, I didn't want you to forget that too. So go ahead.
Well, I'm not going to go all the way to the beginning because, I love Pontiac. I didn't know that I did until, I don't know, several years ago when I started going there. And there was a bit of blight and there was a bit of rundownness, but, I know the Silver Dome's gone. Was that a heartache for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's unfortunately, and I'm not calling out anybody in particular, but for me, it was short-sightedness on the part of leadership at the time, because we had an opportunity to have a professional sports team, the World Cup, WrestleMania 4, right? Like or 5. I can't remember which one it was when Hawks slammed the Giant, right? Like those were all memories. The Pistons played there, the Lions played there, of course. The house that Barry Sanders built. So yeah, there was, I know all good things come to an end eventually. But, like I said, I speak to the vision of leadership because, there were things that we could have done, I think, to salvage what we needed to before it was too late. But neither here nor there.
Yeah, I wish Lansing had a big stadium like that, man.
Yeah.
So,
me too.
But I think Pontiac's got a great vibe to it right now. They've got an economic development organization that's doing really well. Their community development, I think, is doing well. I don't know how they are in the cannabis space, but it just seems like Pontiac has a really good entrepreneurial vibe.
It does, and it's by I don't want to say default or design necessarily, but it's a necessity, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you get to a place where you're almost decimated, where you have a financial manager from the state selling off all of your assets because leadership at the time, over the course of however many decades, didn't responsibly handle said assets and our economic growth. You don't have a choice but to either fail to succeed as a community or figure it the fuck out, right? Excuse my language.
No, please. We swear on this show. Swear. Okay. The more you swear, the better.
Okay, or figure it out. And so entrepreneurs have had to, quote unquote, legally or illegally, right? Have had to figure out whatever they could in order to survive in an environment like that. I'm the president of our Downtown Business Association in Pontiac. I split time between Lansing and Pontiac. So it's called Main Street Pontiac. And a lot of what we've done is started to focus on, if we're going to brand ourselves as a city, we don't have to be all things to all people necessarily. We have 2 or 3 major hospitals right in town. Speaking on propaganda, why aren't we taking advantage of a public, private, and nonprofit partnership, right? Like those are the types of the communities I've seen the most successful, your Grand Rapids of the world and things like that, is because those 3 sectors understand how to work together in unison. And it really is a telltale. So anyway, I'm sorry, I got off on the tangent a little bit.
No, this is what I want to talk, because, I'm really curious about when you ran for city council, when you ran for state rep, what were some of the things you learned? Did you learn a lot about that whole process then, or did you see the problem and like, I got to go fix this, and you kind of knew the process?
Yeah. So originally when I ran for office, the reason why I ran for office was because there was a lack of representation. And what I mean by that, I was 27 at the time. So there was a lack of representation in age, especially in the city of Pontiac, but there was a lack of representation even from people with diverse set of experiences, at least from my perspective. And the more diverse any table is, the smarter everybody becomes, in my opinion.
Damn straight.
You know what I mean? And so that was my attempt to at least hopefully like break some barriers down as to how the community viewed young people in leadership. And so then I got a part of it all. I became a part, because at the end of the day, cities are businesses. There's a budget. Of course, you're doing what's best for your citizens, but you have to make good, sound business decisions, not only for right now, but for the next 10 to 20 years. And I think people are far too worried about being reelected versus doing what's going to make sense, even if you take some blows, that's going to make a big impact in the next 10 to 20 years. It's generally my perspective. So I don't know that I would have been reelected had I won either of those races, because I would have just done what makes sense. I wouldn't have told any line or anything like that. You know what I mean? But it was a learning experience. I know more about the political systems and the way to work a system by way of running for office than I ever would have known. So it was a great experience.
If any candidate said, I'm going to get so much done, I'm not going to get reelected as their campaign motto, that's who I'm voting for. That's who I'm going to vote for. Because that's what we need. We need people shaking up and changing paradigms and shifting and all of that. And I love what you said about, I always say our diversity is a measure of the size of our brain. The more diverse we are, the bigger our brain is. The bigger our brain is, the better the world is. And diversity isn't just a zap thing. It's inclusion. It's inviting. It's making room. It's all those things. So, man, I love what you're saying. Cannabis, real quick. I'm a big fan of cannabis, not just, getting high and partying like that. I've called it a cure-all my entire life. I think it's the reason my eyesight was so good for so long. I think I was very healthy. I'm getting old as shit right now, but I think it kept me healthy. But really important to me is I look at it in the harm reduction space with all the opioid addictions and the meth and all of that. And to make it illegal and to take away from people that it could reduce harm for, I'm really into that fight right now. Just thinking about it as a medicine. And I think, I made a post yesterday and I used the word marijuana, but you're telling me I should have used the word cannabis, I think. And I think I'm going to switch over. But would you tell me why?
Well, of course. I mean, certainly, people should do what they want to do, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be the cannabis police, but the word marijuana, it was used in a derogatory way, particularly when people of Latin descent, I guess is the best way to put it, particularly from Mexico, were transitioning over. And it was used, as medicine, as a psychedelic, whatever they used it for. But it was a way in demonizing, or the word itself, even though the word itself didn't necessarily have a negative connotation, it was used to demonize people and how they went about doing whatever their recreational or medicinal activities were. And so I'm big on language, right? I don't say the illicit market. I don't say the black market because it implies that someone is doing something wrong. I say legacy market. Right. So it's the legacy market of people that, happen to be doing something illegal at the time that's now legalized. How do you continue to make them villains when, they're transitioning like everybody else is? So I try to be careful as much as I can about it.
Yeah.
Marijuana is one of those things where I prefer.
Hey, we lost your audio a little bit. We're hearing you very faintly right now. I don't know if you got a notification or something. But while you're checking that, I'm going to just give a shout out to Tanisha, Voices of Color. And she was talking about the negative connotation. Oops, I just lost my guest. I hope he's going to come back real quick. But the reason that's important to me, I really want to tell Chris this. I'll always hold the show for you, man. The reason I wasn't really asking you to say whether I was doing something right or wrong or do what I want, but I've always known the story that you just told about how it was demonized to demonize the people who were using it. I mean, to me, it's part of, it's part of Jim Crow. It's part of, if you look at what happened with the drug laws and all of that, and who was using cannabis at the time, who was, where it was, the groups it was popular with. And even when I was a kid, you saw that everywhere, right? It was used to punish Black, brown, and poor people every single time. And what you just taught me is amazing to me, because I also care about words. I care about stigmas. I care about how those are used as tools to oppress people. So I actually love that you gently corrected me, if you don't mind me saying it that way. And I'm gonna edit my post, and I'm gonna switch my language because I think that is important, and I think it's important to recognize it in a different context than marijuana, weed, green, whatever you want to call it. I love what you're thinking in this phrase, and probably if you're thinking it, you're talking it, you're doing it. So I imagine a man that owns a basketball team gets shit done. So you ain't just talking.
Appreciate that. I will say one thing too. Particularly about thinking. To your point. So when I transitioned from Pontiac Northern to Cranbrook Kingswood, for those of you you saw the 8 Mile movie, you went to Cranbrook.
I was going to say something, but
heard it a ton, man. But it's a $30,000 a year private school that I received a scholarship to go to. And what was interesting, and I know now what it was, but at the time I didn't, obviously, because I was a kid. But the thinking was different in that coming out of places like quote unquote the ghetto or the hood, right? Urban America. The thought process is you either make it as an entertainer or you make it to the league because what other option do you have? And then when I got to Cranbrook, it seemed like the thought process was, well, why don't you own a team instead of playing for one? And to me, it was really profound in that moment, particularly because I think that helped trigger what entrepreneurial spirit had already like lived inside of me anyway. And, shout out to my mom and entrepreneurs in their own right. And just, allowed me to live in a sense of like fearlessness. You know what I mean? Growing up, like it was never anything that I couldn't accomplish, for good or for bad, I guess, in some cases. So I wanted to point back to the moment where I think it started to trigger in me that entrepreneurship is a better route even than trying to like conquer playing professional sports.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the mission of the Fledge. Let's take on poverty with entrepreneurialism. You gave me an epiphany a little bit earlier because you said, that it was a necessity. The entrepreneurialism was a necessity. It's kind of like invention is the necessity, or is a product of necessity, or whatever that quote is. But so is entrepreneurialism. And that's why, I grew up in poverty. My mom was a legacy entrepreneur. I'll put it that way. Yeah. I love the words that you're using here. I agree with Tanisha. Being intentional with our words is so important because it does set the tone for the conversation and does kind of start to, they're on that side, and at least you can know, who you're dealing with. And so I want people to know they're dealing with someone that cares about that legacy market.
Absolutely.
So thank you for all of that. One more thing. You bringing this team to Lansing right now seems like so very important for our kids, for our 10 to 12 to 15 to 18 to 20-year-old kids, that we got a gun violence problem. I think you know that. And how do you see this is important, what you're doing? You're bringing more mentors. You're bringing more things to do. You're bringing more hope and opportunity. You're bringing a black man that owns a team to show these other people that look like you that this is something you can do. You're a hero, man. If this, I mean, I know you probably don't want to be called that, but to me, that's so super important. And I think you're going to kind of push your players in this direction of being mentors out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I appreciate you saying that because I don't really think about it in that capacity, maybe as much as I should. But listen, being an example, for me, just providing opportunities, right? Everyone as an individual, I believe, is going to shift at their own pace. Right. There's nothing anybody can do to make someone do anything different than what they want to do. At the same time, if there are opportunities and programs that kids have access to, the more opportunities, the better, because the more likelihood that you'll reach more of those kids that we should be reaching. Right. And so one of the things that, before we even decided on the Don Johnson, I really wanted to commit to is the players being a part of the growth of young men and young women, even that are interested in playing professional ball to whatever capacity or whatever extent, but particularly young men, right? Because we're a team of men basketball players. And so when you put it that way, I certainly appreciate it. But my goal, even in cannabis, lately I've been telling people, and it sounds coy, but recently my thought process has really been coming from where I come from. I'm selling weed and I'm playing 2K in real life, right? Like coming from urban America, I'm super fortunate. You know what I mean? And so as men, I don't hoard selling weed legally, I should say. So I don't hoard any information. Anything that I can give, I try to, because the more opportunities that I can give, like I had, the better.
Yeah. I think that Lansing completely screwed up the licensing of cannabis, by the way. I'm not trying to criticize anybody. I don't know necessarily why it happened, but I don't think we gave the legacy guys the chance that should have been happening. And I'm still, the only place I ever bought weed legally is in Amsterdam.
Fair enough.
And I got my legacy guys, and I'm gonna stick with them. Sorry.
Understood. That's okay. Just come to a Lansing Pharaohs game, and then I'll forgive you.
All right. All right. Well, no, you bring us sticky cannabis to town, and I'll forgive you. I'll forgive them. Not you, them. The Pharaohs. Why? What's the? Why'd you pick that name?
Yeah, man, I'm really enthralled with mascots and royalty. You know what I mean? And we've seen Monarchs and we've seen the Royals. We've seen a lot of these teams with the Kings. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm a person of color, obviously. But from my perspective, sports teams never use Eastern Hemisphere royalty. And so the Pharaohs is unique. No one has ever used it. It's obviously a king from ancient Egyptian times. And so it really spoke to me as we were thinking about the concept, and we highlighted some purple as well, just to show the royalty piece of it all. So that was where it came from. And then hopefully subconsciously people start to learn more about it as they see the name the Pharaohs, right? Hopefully people subconsciously say, well, let me explore more about what that means. You know what I mean? I credit, I'm a fan of the arts too. I credit the play Hamilton because, my daughter would have never known as much as she does about, the history and founding fathers, if you will, of America, had it not been for this play that had a primarily all Black cast that configured it in a way where people could actually learn everything without even thinking they were learning about it, right? And so similarly, I mean, I'm not earth-shattering or anything like the play Hamilton was, but similarly, if I could start to tip subconscious thought with the logo and the name, that's what we're doing. Actually, the first use of the word Lansing that I could find serendipitously was the Papyrus Lansing. And it was a script written back, used by the 5th dynasty pharaoh, used the word Lansing. So the Papyrus Lansing. And it was coy because it was about why being a writer was the most noble thing that you can do in life. But it was still cool that there was that connection between the word Lansing and the use of it by pharaohs of ancient times. So worked out.
I better watch the time because I've got a million things I want to talk to you about.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're going to keep moving here a little bit, but the arts, sports, the Pharaoh name, I love it. I didn't know exactly what you were going to say, but I didn't think it was just picked out of the air like the Flint Tropics. Or
no, it wasn't that at all.
So what do you think about you bringing a semi-pro team to where Ron Burgundy's running for mayor right now? I don't know if you know.
I am aware. That again, we couldn't write it. We couldn't write a better movie script for it.
So what's something you do every damn day to push all this goodness, this greatness forward?
Yeah, for me, it's all about how you start your day. For me, I look at every day as a possession. That's my sports, I guess, metaphor or analogy. Every day is a possession. You know what I mean? If you string together enough good possessions, you'll ultimately win the game, right? Is how I look at it. So in my mind, it's how you start your day. It's the meditation. It's the affirmation. It's just taking time to understand what you're trying to accomplish and being intentional about your calendar and your schedule. The intentionality for me is key to how the day ultimately progresses, whether it's big things that happen or small things that get us closer to the big things.
So I'm a Michigan graduate, which, by the way, is the first time I ever heard of Cranbrook. It wasn't from the 8 Mile movie. I went to school with a bunch of Cranbrook kids. But I always get frustrated because Michigan always starts getting sloppy because they're rushing and they're not being intentional when they get that possession, and it pisses me off so many times over the years. Probably everybody feels that. I love this analogy. That's important to me, what you just said. Every day is a possession. I'm gonna switch it to a wrestling analogy, but I'll figure that out in a second.
Okay.
Okay. Man, that was a great answer. So I daisy chain these shows together. Yesterday, I had a kid on the show. His name's JJ. He's a marketing expert. And the question he wanted me to ask you, what is the hardest thing you've ever done willingly, like that you did to yourself? You chose to do it, and it was super hard, you know.
Running for public office.
Yeah, I would have never. I got a checkered past. I ain't bringing that up.
It was the hardest. It was the most gratifying experience, but it was the hardest experience, especially when you care, right? It's one of the hardest. There was never another moment in my life where I had to be on all the time. And then you only turn it off when you go to sleep. And as hard as I worked, not only running for state rep in 18, but city council previously in 2017, we're talking about a district of 5,000 people that you try to touch, and then a district of 5 different communities in one that you have to touch and be strategic about. I hats off to whoever runs for office, because it is an experience that, like I said, I've never had to work harder for something. But the interesting thing, and actually I'll save that part. So yeah, I would answer that. That's the answer to this. Yeah.
Thank you. My guest tomorrow is Eric, and I mess up his name every time I try to say it, so I'm just going to stick with Eric. He is the Ingham County Treasurer. What question would you like me to pass to him?
So I do a podcast, the Canavision Midwest podcast. Generally, we drop an episode every week, but we're pausing for season 2, starting up in October. And we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly in the cannabis industry, just authentically. And the question I ask every guest that I have on my show, Megatron was actually a guest on my show some episodes ago, right before he went into the Hall of Fame. So that was pretty cool. But it's basically, what legacy ultimately would you like to leave? When it's all said and done, when it's over with, you're done, in this case, being the treasurer. What story is it? The Hamilton reference again, right? Like, who tells your story? What story is it that you like to lead after you finish? And one of the things that for me that was really, really good is that I had an opportunity during the pandemic to really lean in on duality. You know what I mean? And it just understanding that I'm going to be a villain to some people's story. I'm going to be a hero to other people's stories. But as long as I'm doing the right thing for the right reasons, in my mind and in my immediate circle's perspective, then, let the chips fall where they may ultimately after the fact. And so, what legacy would you like to leave? And then just stay authentic to that. Because one of the things that I'll say is, you never really know. People say all the time they have haters or they have people who don't like them. It's common. Some people use it for fuel. Some people it's real for it, whatever the case is. But when you see on paper that 50%, at least 50% of the people either in black and white, either don't like you or like someone else better, it puts it into perspective that you're going to be loved by some and you're going to be just disliked by others. And you just have to stick to your mission ultimately. Otherwise, you'll drive yourself crazy trying to get everybody to like you.
I am so happy I didn't interrupt you, because I was going to say, you stick to the mission, you stick to the values, and it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
They're going to hate you. They're going to throw rocks. They're going to throw flowers. They're going to do all kinds of things. And absolutely. Tanisha, I was going to call this out and say, if Tanisha's still listening, she's going to understand what a great question that is for Eric. See why I can't pronounce his name? Schertzing. I think that's right. I hope he's not watching. Thank you, Tanisha. And Mark Paletti put a YouTube channel up, but I don't know what he's talking about. So clarify that for us, Mark. How would you answer that question?
What the legacy, leading a legacy? For me, it's anyone who survives has a sense of survivor's remorse, I think, right? And so for me, it's I never want to be seen as someone that didn't give other people opportunities. I always want to be seen as someone who in an infrastructural way created lifelong legacy. I mean, legislation even provided opportunities for Black and brown people to actually have ownership in the cannabis industry, especially culturally pieced together the cannabis industry with sports, maybe even with music in some capacity, right? Because there's an opportunity in all three together. But for me, I never want to be accused of not being willing to give information and to provide opportunity. I think that's where it's at right now. So.
I just got to do a quick promotion real quick. On TikTok, I've started answering the question from my guest that they pass to the next guest. So I'm going to answer that question later on TikTok and then ask people to stitch with it. So thanks for that question, because I love that question. I think about it a lot, and how to actually remove myself from my own legacy. So that's a hint to what I'm gonna talk about a little bit.
Okay.
And Mark responded back. It's the song "Walk Like an Egyptian" video.
Nice.
Is that gonna be the theme song?
we should play it. I think we will be playing it at our arena.
Were pharaohs only in Egypt, or were they? Was it even Egypt then? It was Egypt.
Yeah, to my knowledge, pharaohs were Egyptian royalty. I could be wrong, but to my knowledge.
Yeah. So I want to research the word a little bit more too, because I want to say something, but I'm afraid I'm not quite right. So I want to research a little bit. We'll talk some other time. Happiness, sadness, joy, hope, or love. Which word or words would you like to talk about?
Happiness, man. Should I elaborate?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm just super grateful with where I am in life. Super fortunate. And what I would say, as a sign off, quote unquote, would be just be authentic to who you are. I mean, the sooner that you can authentically just accept who you are, the better your life will be at a minimum. And I think the better the world becomes because of it. You know what I mean? So I'm just in my authentic bag right now. And I think doing some pretty cool things that I hope that can continue to perpetuate as time goes on. So just happy about where things are.
I think we're lucky that you chose to put your team here. I think we're lucky that somebody with this entrepreneurial mindset, with this way of thinking, the legacy, market, the way you say that, I think we're lucky to have you added to our squad over here, because we're going to do good things. And one thing you didn't do, you didn't come in and tell us, well, Lansing is a blank slate. I can do whatever I want here. You're not coming with that attitude. You're coming with, come on, community, I'm here to help. And I think you're the community for me. I think it's a courting process that you're doing that is a lot better than sometimes we see people come in and they're going to just take it all over and run the show.
No.
So thanks for doing that.
Of course.
Are you happy?
I am, man. Genuinely, like I am.
I love that you tied the word grateful to it too, because those words can be a teeter-totter together. If you're ever unhappy, start to be more grateful. Tell your toothbrush that you're thankful for it, and it'll bring that happiness back. So, And did you just take us out with what you just said?
Just be your authentic self. You'll be more peaceful, and you'll find, probably, at least in my experience, I found that I'm more successful. So just stay authentic to who you are.
All right. I want to show one more thing. Tanisha said, happiness is temporary, joy is eternal. And I'm going to say, you know what, though? I thought it was the other way around when I started asking about those two words. And 1 out of 3 people think that joy is temporary and happiness is eternal. And 2 out of 3 think that what Tanisha just said. I'm on the other side. I think happiness is the eternal thing and joy is the.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
I think I'm wrong. I got to figure this out. I like to learn. So, and we'll just.
I'm gonna go watch some basketball before my players decide that they don't want to deal with me anymore.
Love you, man. Thank you very much. We'll talk
Jay.
when you get back. Have a great time. Good luck for your team. They don't need you till the second half anyways, unless they're down by 30 or something.
Well, we'll see.
All right.
Thank you.
Peace out, everyone.